In honor of Cybersecurity Month, we wanted to understand, why does a month even exist? What exactly is going on? And of course, most importantly, how can we all be safer than we are today? So I'm here with my new but good friend, Bill Roth of HardTarget. Thank you for being here.
You bet.
We're going to talk cybersecurity. This is a topic that I think anybody who's being honest would say scares them, maybe feels helpless. But real quick, a little bit on who you are, what HardTarget does, why is the idea of cybersecurity so important?
Tim, thank you for having me. And I've been a longtime entrepreneur. A few years ago, I got really concerned about my own privacy, my own data that was out there, big tech. There was a lot of stuff in the news, I'd say maybe about 4 years ago, if you remember that. Took a look around and really, like you said, I got scared as to what was out there about me. And I started looking into privacy, security, and how I could protect my family. I have a big family, older kids that are out of the house now, and it was a big concern for me. So I started making moves into finding the right co-founder and partner for HardTarget. What we do, broadly speaking, is cybersecurity for ultra-high net worth families and family offices. Typically single family offices, but we're also working with multifamily offices. Yeah. But we do a lot of interesting training, primarily what we call wargaming, as a means to train and teach these families how to thwart the cyber threats that exist. Mm-hmm. But before we get into any of that, there's sort of a bigger picture of the web, right? Right. Are you familiar with how the web works?
Probably not as much as I should be. Every time I'm around a young cousin or for that matter, some people here, I'm finding out how old and out of date I am. So I say all jokes aside, although most of that isn't a joke. Been at some conferences. Obviously what we do, cyber is important to us. A lot of internal trainings, external trainings, been at conferences. I remember listening to a gentleman speak one time, I think to the topic that you're going to share with us, which was, he was the guy who went around obviously doing speeches. This was at a TD Ameritrade conference, had written a book, but he took a whole year off to kind of research what's out there on me. And it was a horrifying hour-long speech where he showed the dossier that existed. I mean, even just things like, every step he had taken, because we've got our phones in our pocket, tracked. He had subpoenaed everybody to get various records. Again, this was all not even dark web related, but just stuff that would be out there for any of the companies to access. He was blown away by how much information is out there. So that's kind of it for me. I know not everybody's even gotten to hear that kind of talk. I know you brought a really cool graphic we were just discussing to maybe help people understand the situation before us all.
Yeah, I think there's a reason, back to our question at the beginning, why is there a Cybersecurity Month? Well, there's a Cybersecurity Month because we all have data. And the web is really broken up into three primary components. You have the surface, or the public web, that's Google, that's Wikipedia, that's the news stations. Then you have, and that's about 4% of what's online. 4%. Just 4%. We're talking trillions of web pages.
So the stuff that most of us would think of as the web, 4%.
Just 4%. The lion's share of the web, 90% of the web, is what we call the deep web. That's anything behind a login or a paywall. That's a lot of where our data is housed and stored. So when you see one of these data breaches, and there was just one 2 weeks ago with a well-known financial institution, I won't name names.
Not us.
Not them. But 77,000 records were compromised. And so all that data is then out, for someone who has bad ideas to go do something with. And that's 90% of the last part of the web is the scary part, the dark web. That's where that data often then gets housed, it gets sold and monetized by criminals. These are syndicates, these are even nation states or nation states that are supporting crime gangs. There's a billion smishing texts a day that are clicked on our phones. We get all these texts now. A billion of them are clicked every day. Who's sending that? Well, that's the end result of what's happening with all this data aggregation. Because every time you turn your phone on, you're feeding the monster, you're feeding the engine about you. That profile of you grows. So whether that's social media, banking, all these things. Now, of course, you hope your bank, Wells Fargo, Chase, whoever it is, has that stuff locked down. But as we're seeing, the breaches can really get through anybody. So the key to this is to start to claw that back.
What would you say to those people who say, oh, I'm not on the web? I mean, we'll try to talk to people about being careful, or maybe even encouraging them to get on the portal. Oh, I don't do the web. We're all on it whether we like it or not, correct?
Everyone's on the web. If you're seeing a doctor, and the web isn't Facebook. I think sometimes people, when they say that, think.
Well, I think everything you're talking about. Okay, you maybe have a lesser of a profile on 4% of it, but that right. Deep web, that's where a lot of the important information really is.
Exactly. I'll give you an example. We have a multi-billionaire client in Canada who came to my co-founder, Anwar Vistrom, who's world-class in high net worth cybersecurity, and said, look, I'm not on Facebook. You're not going to find anything about me. 60 pages. We found 60 pages on what he owns, assets, all the dossier, as you were saying. And that's really the way you got to think about it, especially as your wealth increases, your profile, your footprint increases, all that stuff makes you a bigger target. So that's why the company is HardTarget, because it's about minimizing your footprint, minimizing your attack surface, so that you're harder to find, harder to see, harder to compromise. So
we only have a few minutes left. Would you be willing to come back?
Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna make Bill a friend of 10 Capital. On that note, no financial relationship between Bill and I. He's simply doing us and our clients a solid, you all, to help share his information, his knowledge. What are some things, I know, again, in the brief conversation we had before this, you mentioned, becoming cyber savvy. So what are a few things, again, this video, everything we've kind of known can make this feel so daunting. What are some initial steps or even thoughts that people can have to start putting them in a better place?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a few things we can all, regardless of our net worth, that we can all and should be doing. Let's start to claw back what's out there about you. Sometimes when we work with ultra wealthy families, we do that manually, which has great effect, but there's some things I'm going to put together a page for our viewers to go to. It'll be at hardtarget.ai/10capital, and we'll provide some options there for you to begin doing this in your own life. But besides that, and I can speak to this maybe the next time, but a good password manager, a good VPN, especially if you're using public networks, you're visiting a library or you're at a Starbucks or somewhere, and this just generally having this mindset of if I don't recognize it, I'm not going to click it.
Is first name 123 not a good password?
And that's not a good one. And your dog's name. There's actually been stories of ultra high net worth families compromised because their passwords were named after their dogs.
Yeah, password managers became a big part of my life. Although then I realized that for them to be safe, they're not online. You might want to back up your password manager in case you ever break your phone. That's my tip.
Redundancy is what it's all about.
As well. We look forward. I know you said you've been willing to do some events in the future. Obviously, come back, do these videos, and we really appreciate not only today, but again, you putting together that resource page together to help our clients.
Tim, it's been my pleasure.
Thanks.